We joked during our dual cab off-road mega test that these vehicles are the new default family option in Australia, and it's not hard to see why when the top two selling vehicles in this country are the Ford Ranger and the Toyota Hilux. Yes, we do love our dual cabs. Nissan has been a part of that fight for a long time now with its Navara, and the latest model grade to join the lineup is the Pro 4X that we're testing here. Instead of heading off-road like we usually would though, and in recognition of the fact that most buyers of high-end dual cabs are reluctant to beat them up off-road, we decided to head off on a typical Aussie road trip. From the beach to the bush, out to the New South Wales Central West, the kind of driving that buyers of these dual cabs are likely to want to do as often as possible. Ideally, we wanted to start this video with a beautiful Sydney beach sunrise, but in typical Sydney start to winter form, the weather had other ideas.
We left Sydney in torrential rain in an effort to escape the weather and made our way across the Blue Mountains. First stop, Bathurst.
Now Sam, when most people think of Bathurst, they think of Mount Panorama. But we don't advise that you do the common stuff, so what have we done?
We've gone around the track, mate. I think it'd be rude not to. If you're in Bathurst, it'd be rude not to go. Do a quick lap around, but we're not staying in town, are we?
No, we're not staying in town. It's about the halfway point here in Bathurst, a little bit probably further past Sydney, but there's a whole bunch of ways you can get here, but we've come the back way from Lithgow, haven't we?
Yeah, that's right. We've gone through Little Tarana, a nice little town. It's actually a beautiful winding road you can take through there, but from Bathurst to Orange, there's 100 different ways you can skin the cat driving there. You can take the main road, or there's lots of different back ways. So.
Now, we said from the outset, we've done a bunch of off-roading in Navaras, obviously. We know how good they are off-road, we know what they're capable of, and we're taking a look specifically at this, more about that whole beach to the bush concept and how people use these higher spec dual cabs. This is the Pro 4X. What's different and where does it sit in the Navara range?
So this is a new specification. It sits above STX. So this is almost like a wild track competitor, I suppose, or a Rogue if you're looking at the Hilux. This is similar to an STX overall, but you've got a bit of a black pack thing going on here. You've got different wheels and tyres. They're a Yokohama Geolandar all-terrain, so you probably will get slightly better off-road performance out of this car.
Not too bad in the wet either. We've been driving the rain today.
Yeah, no, it's been good. It's nicely composed on-road, definitely. And you've got the flash interior, so you've got some embroidery on those leather seats, but I did notice no heated seats in this model.
Yeah, no heated seats. I tell you what I do like though about the exterior. You hear a lot in Australia, why don't the Japanese manufacturers make their vehicles, their dual cabs, look more like their American truck counterparts? I reckon I can see a lot of Titan in this.
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
looks very much like
absolutely.
a Titan.
Obviously, the look has facilitated the new safety technology that this new Navara has, AEB, all that sort of thing. But yeah, the look is definitely much more American than the outgoing model.
Now, I'm told we've got a hotel and a pizza and possibly a beer waiting for us in Orange.
Okay.
So we're going to go and do that.
Let's hit the road, mate.
Let's hit the road.
Pretty typical country road we're on at the moment, mate. Just winding around, a few potholes and bumps to deal with.
Ruts, poor surfacing.
Yeah, it's a good test for a car like this, I think, because you can bang on about off-road ability till the cows come home, but I think this is a good test for a car that people use for things like road trips, longer travelling, holidays, that sort of thing.
Well, two things, mate. Even if you do a lot of off-roading, you've still got a good, if you live in a big city like Sydney or even Brisbane or Melbourne,
of course,
you've got a good 2 to 3 hours on sealed stuff like this to get to the good off-roading.
That's right.
That's right. One thing. And then number two, as we've said many times before, and we do sound a bit like a broken record, higher up in the price range, people don't necessarily beat these things up off-road.
No.
They spend a lot of time doing this, which is why we're doing a country road trip like this. And you're right, if you're doing this, say you got 4 people and some luggage in the back, you don't have a hell of a lot of weight in it, so you're going to get a good sense of how it rides.
That's right. And this has been quite good. So the Navara's had coil springs in the rear. That's been a unique thing. I think the Musso has it as well, but most other utes have leaf springs.
Yep.
This thing is balanced. It's got a nice balance front to rear, I think. It doesn't have as much of that ute jiggle unladen like we are now that you might be used to with leaf springs. This is a really good ute to drive overall.
It's a good dual cab. It's comfortable as a passenger. You got enough room in the second row for adults. You probably wouldn't want to put 3 across. But you got enough room for 2 adults in the second row. I think you'd have to work out what you're doing with the tray. You and I have always said you either need a quality hard lid or a canopy of some kind to best use the space. Maybe you put some drawers in there, set it up for some power if you run a fridge or whatever. But I think if you do that, this is a really good road trip vehicle for exactly this. If you've got teenage kids, perfect vehicle for it.
Yeah. So the engine hasn't changed. It's 2.3 litre twin turbo. You've got a 7-speed auto. I really like this gearbox.
Yeah, good gearbox.
You can get a 6-speed manual if you prefer, but this one is quite good. And the engine probably isn't as punchy overall, especially now the Hilux has 500 Newton meters. That Ranger 2 litre is quite a powerful engine as well. This is good off the mark, I think. It probably just feels a little bit breathless when you start to really work it hard on the highway, overtaking. But 90% of the time it's fine, and I've got to say, quite efficient.
Yeah. What's your average now?
It's 9.3.
And that's over a good few hundred kilometres of driving.
Yeah, and that's a fair bit of town driving before we got out here. But I did see at the best, it puts up this little thing when you turn the engine off and it says the best figures you've done, and I did get 7.1 there.
Yeah, that's good.
And that's from the highway driving we've been doing.
That's really good.
That's good. It's quite quiet at the same time.
Well, I guess the message then is, mate, that it's not always easy to identify why dual cabs are as popular in Australia as they are. I mean, there's tax reasons for sure and business pointers and things like that. But in reality, a lot of people who buy dual cabs would probably be better off with a four-wheel drive wagon. But having done exactly what you need to do with this kind of thing to go on a road trip, it's fair to say that this does the job, and it does it relatively easily.
It does do it quite well. I mean, this for me, I've always had a soft spot for the Navara.
Me too.
In the range overall.
Yep.
It is getting on a little bit in the years, but they've kept updating it, kept improving it, and I think this is a really solid option now. A long road trip like this gives you a good chance to review the interior and comfort of any car, and we've certainly spent some quality time behind the wheel of this Navara. Leather accented seats come standard for Pro 4X, and they're complete with embroidery and plenty of stitching. The seating position is a little high and flat, and the lack of telescopic reach adjustment can cause issues for some. However, we did find this Navara to be quite comfortable on the long drive. The new steering wheel, which came with the latest Navara facelift, is a welcome improvement, and the combination of an improved digital instrument cluster and a recently updated infotainment display are welcome additions on the long drive. There are two cup holders up front, along with a couple of button blanks and storage for incidentals. There's only one 12-volt and one USB on the dash, but you'll find a USB and USB-C hiding in the center console. In the back, comfort and space is also good for the segment. There are air vents and a single USB outlet, and my personal favorite, an electric sliding rear window, which is nice to keep the fresh air circulating while you're on the road. In the tray, the Pro 4X gets a tub liner, adjustable tie-down rail, a new sports bar design, and a nicely weighted tailgate. Beautiful trees here, mate. I love the look of this place. It's very iconic for the Central West, I think, but why have we stopped here?
Just to look at the trees.
Yeah, okay.
Basically, I like trees.
Did you bring a rake to
We need a rake here. The reason we're here, probably going to get this pronunciation incorrect, but there was an old racetrack here in the 50s and 60s called New Blas, which is GNOO, new word, BLAS, which was kind of Orange's answer to Bathurst. They used it in the 50s and the 60s, quite famous race drivers here. Came out here to see if we could find some remnants and some bits and pieces, so we're going to go and do a little bit of exploring before we leave. Okay, so first things first, Sam, we'll get to the driving in a minute. But I love the look of this Pro 4X. It's confounding me a little bit, and I'll tell you in a second why, but I love the styling of it.
It's good, it's good. I feel like the STX might be a smarter buy for a lot of people out there, especially when you consider you can option the STX up to have leather and heated seats. But at the same time, we know how popular these utes are. This thing will probably still sell quite well regardless.
Oh, it'll be popular anyway. And the reason it confounds me, you mentioned one of them, it's twofold. STX, which I've always loved. I think in Navara, that spec has always been a good one. And then of course, N-Trek Warrior.
Yes.
I think if you want the ultimate Navara, that's the one you get, and we know how good that is.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, on the other side of the equation, the STX is still fantastic.
Yeah, it's worth waiting for that N-Trek Warrior if you do want a bit more off-road performance. These tyres, they're good on-road, and they should be a bit better off-road as well. It is a shame that it's taken Nissan so long to get the Navara to this point, because they've ironed out all the problems now. They're into their 4th or 5th generation. And I think this is a really well-refined overall ute.
It is, it's really good, and that gets to the next point, which is the driving. So, as we said at the start of this video, we've done plenty of off-road testing, and this was more about looking at this particular specification grade, the way the majority of people use them, which is driving around town, country road trips, practicality for that kind of stuff. So to the driving, I actually think this is really impressive. I've always said that the coil spring rear end at the back of the Navara, I reckon makes a lot of sense for anybody who doesn't carry weight around all the time.
100%. It's got benefits and this thing rides quite well. It steers well. It's got a little bit of a car-like nature to it, which is nice. Probably the one weakness is the setting position. It does feel a little bit flat and a little bit high compared to other utes. You don't sort of sit in it as much.
Into it.
Some people might prefer that, but you're also missing rake adjustment in the steering column.
You've got tilt, but
you've only got tilt, yeah. So you can't maybe dial yourself in just as nicely. But at the same time, I've put a few Ks on this thing now, out in the country, long drives. It's been quite comfortable.
Yeah, it is comfortable on road trips. Now, let us know what you think. What we'd like to know is which spec you'd buy. So I'm going to put Sam on the spot in a sec, but let us know in the comments section which spec you would buy, whether you'd go Pro 4X or whether you'd go either side of it. You've got one Navara you can buy. Which one are you buying?
If I'm not waiting for the Warrior, I used to really like the SL specification.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
It's got the steel wheels, a pretty basic interior.
Looks
Because
tough.
I'd like to probably change those things out anyway with aftermarket gear. But currently, I really like these LED headlights. So for me, I'd be looking at ST, maybe jumping up to STX.
Okay. It's a tough one for me. I reckon obviously N-Trek Warrior, if you're doing a lot of off-road, that goes without saying, but I'd really struggle to choose between this and STX. It's muddied the water for me. So let us know which one you like. Don't forget to click on like if you've enjoyed the video, hit subscribe so you stay up to date with all of our videos, and the full review, go to either drive.com.au or caradvice.com.